Very rarely one will pop up that's very clear and will show features of rod buildings together which are very bright. There's probably about a group of 6, 7, 8 in this structure here. There's no excavation in this structure, it's only a shadow on one side. But what we see here is the straight line rod rim that happens at the edge usually, on one side only. I'll just do a quick measurement of this one. Just pick one rod in the group. So it's about 80 meters. We're looking at something nearly 25 stories high, which again would be one of the tallest buildings in Sydney. We have a whole group of them. The width in this case is interesting as well. So I have a whole group of rod buildings together. The width's about 60, 70 meters on the ground. What we have is a very clear square angle to this courtyard. So it's been cleared. It looks very flat around the building. And what we have here is a definite square edge on this side that shows it's all been cleared and it's a flat area that surrounds it. That's a common feature of all these buildings or structures. Again, it points away from being a natural formation. It's very hard to see how nature would produce structures like these with flattened courtyards around them and bright rims on one side and tall rod buildings on the other side, or rod structures. Very hard to believe it could be a natural formation. And from high up, it's very clear to see this. Where inside looks slightly a darker green tinge than the outer colours, nearby colours. There's one little rod structure there in the corner, and the others are zigzag rim-shaped. It's a very clear example. They're very hard to come by being that clear and that show the structures. We'll just use a sunlight gauge on that one to see what happens to the rods. That one disappears a bit, so obviously that's an angle where the sun would actually take that one away. But generally most of them stay there. So there's only one that disappeared, and that was the one internal there. And just down our bottom we have some other rods as well. We'll now go to the largest. This is probably one of the clearest ones. We'll now take you to one of the largest ones I found. Most of these buildings are actually observed from about 1 or 2 kilometres, but this would be one of the largest I found. And as we keep going up, it's even observed from about 11 kilometres, 14. So even at 20 we see there's something there that looks a bit unusual. So as we zoom down, we see 2 together. Again, we've got the classic towers on one side, what looks like an excavation, which I don't think would be a shadow only in this case, and the rim right-angled rods that happen on the outer side, or the opposite side. I've only seen one building, which is in a separate episode, where the height on one side is nearly equal to the other. So that was a rare difference. If we use the ruler on this one, we'll be very surprised to find out it's nearly 450 metres wide. We're getting close to half a kilometre wide. So this will be one of the largest ones that I've seen on the exposed resolution moon images. As we go wider, we also seem to go wider as well in the actual rim of towers around the one side. So if we just use the Google again, from the start of where the rim is to the outer side where the groups of towers are, that's 90 metres wide. You can see it forms a wall where it's so luminous that they all seem to blend and just form a very thick wall around the excavation or cavity. On this side again we see that zigzag pattern happening, and we can actually even probably attempt to measure some of the towers, the rods on this side. We have one internal one there. To try to measure the ones on the outer side, we picked what looks like the top of the wall that's created by all these towers together, go all the way down. We're looking at 90 metres, so it's a 30-storey structure. Again, this would be one of the tallest buildings in Sydney. So to have a structure this size, trying to understand how it could be a natural formation, repeating itself non-stop on the lunar surface, is very hard to comprehend. And these are very bright ones as well. They actually become filaments, where it seems as though the rods are only bright in the centre and actually form like light globe filaments in this case, and on the outer side there it forms that defined opposite rim, I call it more. Obviously there's energy production happening here, and these are very bright. In fact, you can see the tops of the individual towers across here. One, two, from this side here you see the top ridges of those towers pop up, and internally you start to see the zigzag pattern of all these towers joining individually. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll use the actual sunlight time of the day image on these to see if the internal ones disappear, and they do. So obviously the light catches them only at certain times. There we go. They're the internal ones, but normally all these images catch the internal ones anyway. So I think they pick the best image for Google Moon. So as we go wider in the rim of the crater, or the diameter, we also widen the wall of structures around the crater, and these are very luminous. This can be seen from nearly 15 kilometres high up. It's beyond comprehension how this could be a natural structure. Again, it could be. I'm not saying it isn't, but again, it repeats itself throughout the whole lunar surface. I've only found one example where on one side it's the same thickness nearly in height as the rods on the other side. It's a very rare, one-off example I found. All of them seem to be similar to what we see here, and this is by far the largest that I've found so far. I've just picked this other one I found recently, and it's a lot smaller obviously, but it just goes to show you how from high up we can tell something is not natural happening on the lunar surface. We've got the square type of excavation or square platform around the structures. It looks like a definite a rod-like building, various rods joined. In this case, they aren't as bright as the previous one. They don't seem to emit such strong light or energy. And just to compare the width of this one, it's 160 metres. The previous one was 440 metre wide excavation. We could have what seems like a little excavation on the side here. I don't think it's a shadow in this case. And again, we've got that there's a T-shaped fine filament line. These are very bright, and they always happen on the opposite side of the larger structure. So it seems as though it's some type of energy grid or a fence pattern around the actual structure. And on this side, there's the courtyard or rectangular area around it. So this could be seen from about 1 kilometre up. Again, they don't look natural structures, they don't look man-made structures, so they could only leave extraterrestrial intelligence or some type of human. Again, there's no roads or anything that leads to these structures that would indicate any human type of involvement of a building and carrying raw materials in there. And we'll just try the effect of sunlight at various days to see how that internal rod disappears, and yes, it does. So that's only caught by the sunlight at certain times, and that appears to come out of the actual excavation or crater. So we'll just switch that off, and that always will find our best image on Google Moon. Okay, so that's one more interesting structure there that shows the square courtyards around these things and the opposite bright rims.